Hello, everybody. What's up? This is indeed the E-Man chilling like a villain, sing like Bob Dylan, keeping on low with some double stuff Oreos. And I'm honored to have once again on the show, Mouseketeer, actress, a multifaceted woman, if you will. And she was, like I said, she's kind enough to be on the show a few months ago, and she's back because there were some things we didn't cover. And I'm honored to have Mrs. Jennifer McGill on the show today. What's up, Jennifer?
Hey, it's good to be back. I'm very excited for part two. I'm excited for these new questions. I'm ready.
Oh, right on, right on. But I'm not alone. In the previous interview, I said like one of my friends since the fourth grade, my best friend since the fourth grade, kind of introduced me into the Mickey Mouse Club. And he's co-hosting today. And I want to give a big welcome to a man of God. He can play the bass, he can sing. He's also a very talented guy. Mr. Juan Dickerson, all the way from Wide Awake, North Carolina. What's up, Juan?
Hey!
What's going on, man? How you doing? How you doing, Jennifer?
Thank you so much for introducing this gentleman to the show.
Yes. He told you how it happened, right? He would call and we would sit there, we would listen to the show over the phone. Wait for those free preview weekends.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. See, I don't know if anyone told you, but I was also a fan of the show. So I would come home and I would watch it like after work.
Oh, no.
And I'd watch like we'd tape it because I think it came on before I came home. I think it was 5:30, Eastern time. So I'd come home and like watch the show and see how it all came together after all the work.
Wow.
So yeah, I remember the previews because my friends would be like, I get to see you now. And I'm like, yeah. So I was a fan of the previews too.
How much was it? Juan, how much was it back in the day, like for the Disney Channel? How much did it cost?
I think like for premium channels back then, it was like $35.99.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is
I seem to remember. Seem to remember the 99. It seemed like everything had 99 on the end of it.
Yeah.
And I think it was like $35.99. And once a year, they would have it like I think it was like every quarter, but there would be one quarter where it was like all week. There would be like weekends. And then there was like this big push and it'd be like all week. It'd be like 7 days. And so you get to watch stuff like Tommy Tricker and the Stamp Traveler, Train Ride the Kathmandu.
Jovovich was in that. That was the first time I saw her.
Y'all, it's taking me back. But those was some exciting times.
Yeah.
Chipmunks, the Chipmunks movie will be on.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Remember the one with like all the female chipmunks and they were working like it was like diamond dolls. I don't know.
That was the song. Diamond
all
Dolls.
the songs, like those songs were amazing. I knew all the songs. Like if you put it on right now, I'd probably
with the girls
song.
With the one with the diamond doll.
With the girls
diamond.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Like
yes.
oh my
yeah.
It was so good.
It was more money than what we could afford at the time. So to be able to see it and catch those previews, man, everything shut down. It won't no going outside to play. It won't none of everything shut down.
If we'd had digital calendars, it would have been a blocked out day for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to kind of go over certain things when I did the first interview, there's so much going on in my head. And so until I watched the interview, I'm like, oh, I kind of missed that. Oh man, she said this and I didn't really quite respond. And so like when you guys were just talking about the whole free trial on week, you said that in the interview before you said that you guys would do like, because you guys knew that the free trial was happening, you guys would do like you guys were kind of up the ante in the performance. You guys were kind of aware that you guys like were performing for the free trial week. What were some of the things that you guys did?
Well, I would say that when I pull my childhood files in my brain, I don't remember them pulling us aside and saying, this is for the free trial week or the preview week, so be on your best, game. I don't remember that, but I know that we had exceptionally cool episodes on trials, and I think that it would all come together when I would watch, and I would see, oh, they're airing this one during this week or during this day. We would have episodes where we knew it was really special, like when Reverend Jesse Jackson came on, and when we did the it's the same episode, I believe it was we did the Michael Jackson song Black or White, and
nice.
It wasn't every week that we'd have a full cast production. Those were fairly rare, and that was a full cast production. And what that meant was those of us who weren't as much of a dancer still had to have choreography. And so if you watch the Black and White dance, you'll see that they've sort of paired people, like maybe like the Fringe. I believe I was on the sidelines and I was like doing some like Vogue, like Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation stuff, like standing kind of like, I don't know, just sort of boxing, framing the actual dancers who were doing high kicks and pirouettes or whatever they were doing. And so it was a different kind of animal to bring all Mouseketeers together in one dance presentation like that. So that was a big deal, stuff like that. But yeah, that's the big one that I remember. We had fantastic holiday shows while we did holiday shows. I don't know if that was every year, but I remember we had a great Christmas medley once where I got to ride in a sleigh. I don't know how they did it. I guess it was on wheels, I guess. My favorite was our Halloween special, since I know, this 'tis the season for that. But we did Thriller, and there was a really funny, I'm going to call it just a flub. It was just sort of an oversight, but someone else who's a fan of Jennifer McGill could call it destiny. But I had recorded the first melodies for the end, for all the choruses for Thriller. And then they just sort of forgot to record everybody else doing all the rest of the vocals, like all the backup vocals. So the whole double chorus at the end is just me on melody. So they had to make it the Jen McGill ending, because there I am, like I'm the only one they've recorded. And back then there was no digital way to float in or fly in vocals from another section of the song. So their hands were kind of tied, I guess, once they got the song back and realized, oh, we didn't put any other, group solo vocals on this last vocal. This is Jennifer all by herself. So it became like the Jennifer finale. And I just remember I really loved what I was wearing, and I was kind of coming into my own. I was probably like 14, 15, and it was a good year. And so, but they changed the whole stage. Like the diner was gone.
The
diner had a haunted house and like wrought iron gates, and everyone got dressed up. Like the people that weren't the soloists in Thriller were the witches and the ghouls and everything dancing around. And so it was a very major production as far as set design and costuming. So that could have been on the preview week too. I'm not sure, but they went all out that year.
Oh, for sure. Also, like in the previous interview, I remember you were talking about how when you're growing up in chorus, you sung songs like Deep in the Heart of Texas and Texas Our Texas. Now, Juan and I, we sung this song. I don't know if you're familiar with it. That's what I was going to ask you. There's this song we used to sing in chorus called 50 Nifty. Do you remember that song? 50 Nifty, United States from 13 original. Do you remember that?
Sounds good to me, but no, I didn't sing that song.
Oh, wow.
That was our jam, man.
We learned all of our states based off of that song.
Yeah, I should have song, but I didn't.
Yeah.
It's a great song.
You missed out. You missed out. There was
another similar song that I think I had been on track to learn. It was maybe part of the Yankee Doodle Dandy melody. It was like California, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. But I didn't finish, or I don't remember all of it. But like that, I mean, I guess that was my state's song, but I didn't stick. I don't know.
What about we also did John Denver Country Roads. Roads.
Yeah. Yes. I actually learned that song for a pageant. So totally random. But yeah, I was they probably had like a little finale and they asked all the kids to learn it, and so I had a harmony and all of that. So I learned part of that song.
Cool.
So how many pageants were you in, or that you remembered to be in, that you were in as a child?
So I remember the duration, and I remember I won all of my contests in the talent portion except for 2 within a 3-year period of time. I was in pageant I was like 7 and a half when I entered my first one. And I won the little talent crown. I sang, "I want a hippopotamus for Christmas." And somehow I won, and it gave me a big ego that I could just conquer the world. And then I did. I kept conquering the talent portion. It became my sport, like someone kicks a soccer ball for the first time and they're like, this is it. This is my grade school career right here. And I just knew that talent contests were my grade school career, like for the foreseeable future. And my mother loved to sew and make costumes. And so she would, she was my voice teacher, my first small town voice teacher. My mom, she had a music degree, and our whole house was very musical. And so that became our hobby, but it was segmented, or at least the ones I chose to do were segmented so that you could win a crown in each segment. And so I would always win the talent portion. And that was my MO. I remember there was one pageant brand that when my mother and I showed up, they asked us not to sign in because you have to pay probably like $50 or so to get into a contest. And if people saw my name on the list, they would turn away and they would not enter their child because they're going to save their money. And that seemed crazy to us. Like that, it was so, I guess it was a compliment, but it was also like, what? Really? Yeah. There's so many other win, like you're not going to enter just because I'm going to sing my face off. That's weird. But it is what it is. It was one of my most memorable moments actually of the pageantry was, I guess, the politics behind it. I think by the end of it, I was 10 when I was doing the auditions for the Mickey Mouse Club and signing the contract. So a good 3 years of pageantry led me to about 50 trophies that we had like on this big shelf in our living room. I don't think I entered 50 contests, but I won 50 trophies. And my mother made me a pillow, like a cylindrical pillow on which I would put all of my tiaras. We eventually, when we moved to Orlando from Texas, I remember my mother donated all of the trophies. I'm sure she asked my permission, but we donated all the trophies to Special Olympics, and we kept the names, the plaque or the name tag that's on the metal. It was all metal, and I think I still have those in a box.
Cool.
I should go through those, look at it all.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What would be your advice to a parent that is trying to support their kid, young actor, young singer, even football player or whatever? But what would be your advice to a parent that's trying to support their child's dream, or maybe that parent that maybe hasn't picked up on that it's their dream, it's something that they feel like they're good at? What would be your advice?
I think, your second question probably should come first, because you want to make sure that it's not your dream as the parent, because maybe it was something that you used to love, or that maybe you see that your child is really good at it. But having that person-to-person conversation and just saying, I want to hear your heart. Like, I want you to be truthful. Like, let me know. What do you think? What do you think? And even if they say, I'm not sure, I like it, but I'm not sure, that's very normal. Most people don't know what they want to do as a career, or even as a number one hobby when they're super young. There are many exceptions to that, but most people want to kind of have more time to experiment and try on a few different hobbies or sports or competitions or crafts. And I encourage patience. I also know that if your child is like me and wants to lead that charge and is constantly bringing you like links, or I was almost going to say brochures, but that would have been back in the day, but like, links to websites, or, hey, I love this contest, or, hey, I'm interested in rope climbing, or, hey, I'm interested, whatever it is. I would encourage, to the best of your ability, to let them explore, because they could very soon pick up something and say, I liked it when it was by myself, but now that it's a competition, I don't like it, and just encourage the dialogue. Because I think one of the biggest pitfalls is that we just make children commit so all in. And maybe that's not the parent, it's the facility that offers, right. I guess the exploration of that subject matter. Maybe they ask everyone to commit for a bigger thing. And I think just making sure that no matter what, you are having that dialogue with your child and say, look, maybe you try this for a season. Maybe we try it and we can let it go. But if they are gung-ho like I was, and they just know that they know that they know that do this somehow, however you can support, a lot of hobbies and sports, it's very expensive. And, I'm president of an artist development company, and I can appreciate that this business of show, anything related to show business, it has to be a calling, and you have to know that this is your purpose to be audio and visual therapy, because not only is this young person for a season asking their parents to invest, but over time, they're going to be called upon to be a full out independent business person, because artistry is your business at that point. You have to be comfortable knowing that there's a lot of investment on the front end, and that there's no guarantee that you're going to make that investment back on the back end. It's even a record label, which I know right now it's not necessarily the go-to, record labels don't necessarily develop people anymore on average, but even a record label cannot guarantee that they're going to recoup their own investment on an artist. So it's all up and down, and I think having those real conversations with your child, I think they deserve to know the full scope of what you're pouring into and what you're willing to. Yeah, because I think in that way it is a partnership. I'm in the middle of writing a book, and it's about questions like what you've asked. And your family is your first team, and you learn from that team how you eat and how maybe you want to do things differently. No family and no person's perfect. So, I learned a lot from my family about how to invest in a family unit to stay together through transitioning from a small town into big Orlando, Florida, and me getting on a television show. We stayed together. We made the move together. That was a big risk. And our friends and family raised an eyebrow. Like, you guys are moving mountains for this 10-year-old for a show that may not work. That's a big risk. And now I am amazed as an adult, looking back on that, what an investment and what a good payoff that was, because I'm a better, well-rounded human because I had my full family with me during those developmental years. It's huge. But what I would have wanted more was to learn more about investing. My family weren't investors. And so I would have wanted to do that differently. And I worked that differently now. And I learned that from my first team as well, and it's not about failure. It's about learning what to do and what you don't want as you expand your team. And first team, you're your child's first team.
As a vocal coach, because you're a vocal coach now, right?
Yes.
And you do many other things. What do you believe that everyone has a voice? They just need to find it? Because you see some of these shows like American Idol or Voice, especially American Idol in the earlier seasons, where people will sing and it doesn't come out so well, and then Simon says what he says, and then they go off crying. Do you believe like everybody has that potential to sing, and it just needs to be nurtured, and they need to be consistent, or some people are just a lost cause?
Well, I think the labeling needs to be adjusted. I mean, I think shows that use people's flaws or insecurities as entertainment, I have a different opinion of using a show to do that. But it's because I believe that vocal coaching is a version of therapy. Most of what makes up a singer is their perception of what is a scary note, what is a good note? What is a bad note? And then other people's perceptions and opinions filter into their own perception of how they sing. And so when you clear out all the fear and you just mechanically and build someone up mechanically strong and then dramatically strong, and then, you know, the dynamics will show up. When you build up the confidence, it can be a game changer, you know, for anyone. I'll go deep with you. I believe that when, you know, the Bible says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord, you know, I feel that, however you feel about the legalism or non-legalism about, you know, Bible stuff, but I like to imagine that when God created the world, if he spoke the world into existence, you know, that's all about vibrations. That's about a vibration tone, right? And if the world was created through sound, you know, you need to think about how we as people, we're always making sounds, our heartbeats, you know, when we scratch our head, everything is circulatory system. When we bat our eyes, you know, when we turn our head, the joints, you know, could creak a little bit. We may not hear it yet, but
I hear it.
You know what I'm saying? Like kind of an old joke, but not really. You know, it's like we are constantly making joyful noises of life unto the Lord, right? And so I really believe that anyone who wants to make a joyful noise, who wants to sing and vocalize, I think that there's a place spiritually for that to be nurtured. That's across the board, because we are made to have that potential. Now, scientifically, there are a small population of the human race who are tone deaf, right? Like not everybody walks, not everybody sees, right? Not everybody tastes the same, not everybody speaks the same language. We all have variations and not everybody can do everything.
Right.
But most people can sing on pitch, sing in one key. You know, most people can be taught to have a lovely voice and a confident and strong voice, but it's in the eye of the beholder if we think that, you know, whatever the label is, you want to label it. So I'm really protective about how we cultivate and nurture the singing community and the singers who want, you know, the people who want to be singers. And it does start with how you grow up. You know, I've been teaching a client recently who has spoken out, you know, in the media that they were told by a loved one when they were very young that they didn't have a good voice. Right. And this person came to me and we have worked diligently for months, and the feedback and the change is incredible. And I can guarantee you that even though we work the muscles and we work the connections and all the ways that I, you know, work my magic on someone, but if they did not show up and work hard and believe in themselves, or at least trust me that I believe in them, you know, the result wouldn't have been as powerful as they are right now, you know? And to me, it's the improvement that I think is the most exciting for a vocalist. And I think there's room for anyone who wants to sing. But when you expose yourself to a show that you can't control the opinions and the way that they edit something together, unfortunately, you're asking for trouble. And it's unfortunate that people can't, after all these seasons, see that as a potential threat, you know, when you walk to a show like that. And I'm so sad that that happens to people. I'm really sad about that, you know. So that's a little, but those are all the layers that I'll.
Beautiful. I love hearing that. The previous interview, like I said, I didn't get a chance to talk about the newer Mouseketeers that came in. When I was watching the A&E biography, right? I didn't realize, for some reason, that Tony, Rona, JC, and Carrie came in later. For some reason, I thought they were part of the original OGs, but they came in later, and they were older cast, and they were trying to bring in, you know, an older generation or older audience of viewers. What can you say about those people?
Well, I was so excited to learn about that particular entering group. I remember that one of our producers pulled me aside and they wanted to show me the VHS tape of the new ones. And they were very excited about this one guy. They're like, you got to see this guy. He's like our Italian stallion. He's super cute. He's like a Damon, you know, just different, but he's like this really like handsome Italian guy. And they showed me Tony Luca. And I was like, this is great. You know, this is great. You know, he's very, very cool. I'm very excited. It's just a VHS tape, right? Very excited.
Right.
So they were super excited about that one. And so we're discussing Tony. And then JC pops on right after because it's this, you know, continuous audition reel. And I go, who is that? So I was super excited about JC. There was just something about his voice. You know, I really respond to his vocal quality. And he was always one of my favorite singers on the show. I've kind of said that in general before, you know, I was a really big fan of JC. But like when I met everybody, I was just so excited to have new people. I was there the whole time. So every year was kind of like opening up a new present, like who's going to be here this year? You know, who's going to be here? And yeah, to see these older kids, I think not only was I very excited to have these older, cool kids, you know, this new batch, but I also was a little deflated because I was hoping that maybe I would be one of the older kids that season. And I wasn't, you know, because I was second youngest for much of the beginning seasons, you know. Lindsay was younger. And I want to say maybe when Alana came on, she was younger than Lindsay, maybe. So I was in the bottom half as far as the age. And so when they brought on these older kids, I was like, man, I'm still not one of the cool kids. I'm just one young kid. So it was, you know, both. But I was super excited. Like, I mean, Rona, look, there's not a bad Mouseketeer in the bunch. Like, we're all just, you know, very diverse and talented in our own ways. And everybody was impressive when I met them. And you kind of have this comparison game, but you also have this feeling of I'm still among my people. I'm still among my peers. I'm still among people who get it. They get this career, they get this job, and they show up and they do it well. And so it's this interesting social / professional excitement when but what happened was Tony Luca was cast as a brunette, like, you know, this Italian brunette, but he entered the rehearsal period as he'd put sun in his hair. And so it was like this sort of brassy blonde. And at the time I kind of liked blondes. And so then I was all excited. I was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. But still, when JC opened his mouth, like, that was it. I just loved his voice and I just thought he was super special. And again, Rona is one of my favorites. She is hilarious. And now, just as a grown woman, I mean, so deep, so wise, amazing career, you know. So I looked up to all of them back then, and I still do that today.
Awesome. Can I ask you a question? Now, so we know that you had a lot of fun there, but you know, I'm just curious to see what was it like when MMC was over, and what kind of, was there any kind of like with anything, when you do something for a long time and then you're not able to do it anymore, you kind of get down, so you can kind of like go into depression and things like that. Did you have that bout, or was it kind of like, we're on to the next thing? Because you seem to be like very energetic and you're always looking for something else to do. So was that the case then?
For me, I had already been accepted to NYU as a junior in high school. And so probably what I remember, it wasn't as much of a downer. Almost like, well, that makes my life simpler, right? Because I would have had to make a big choice. Do I continue to my first tuition check, or, you know, do I, like, because I would have stayed on the show, you know. Back then there was no gap year, but that's what I would have probably taken, you know, because I think I was almost up at the end of my contract. So I think that there might have been some questions about, well, do they have me for another full year? Would I need to sign a new contract? What would I do about college? It was going to get very complicated. So I think for me, because I had literally been on that show since 5th grade or so, I think I was okay. I was very much at peace with, okay, if this is the way it's supposed to go, you know, I have my next in place already. It was a transition for me. I remember when, and we'll get back to the original kind of core of this, how we branched off here was about the young, you know, the last batch of celebrities that, you know, future celebrities that came on. When the last batch of Mouseketeers entered in season 6, which were Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Ryan Gosling, Justin Timberlake, Mark Lynch, who on the show his name was Tate, and TJ Fantini, and Nikki DeLoach. They were, as far as I know, they were all fans of the show, you know, and so it was very different for them to come on at their young age. Like Brittany was 12 and I was 16, I think, about. And I remember at the end of season 6, we were going to have one more, right? We were going to go back into season 7, but we weren't aware of that yet. So at the wrap party for season 6, I had Justin and Ryan kind of in my lap, like I was comforting them. And they were kind of teary-eyed because they were explaining to me that they were worried that they would only get this one season, that there wasn't going to be another one. And I said, I'm like, hey kids, it's fine. I've been here forever. It's going to work out. You got a bright future ahead of you. Like whatever I was saying at like 16-ish. And someone snapped a picture, which, you know, has gone kind of around a few times. I think even Lance Bass had, I don't know, tweeted it or something a few years ago. It makes its way around, but yeah, me and little Justin and Ryan just kind of, you know,
I've seen that picture. Yeah,
it's been around, and you know, I really treasure that memory. Who would have thought it was going to be a thing? But I really appreciate that they were concerned, you know, about not getting another season, and then we did. And so I just feel like at that point, you know, for me, I can only speak for me. I think that what I saw amongst the Mouseketeers was a mixture. I think some people who were older than I was, they were fine. They were ready. They were good. If this is done, I got other things I can go do. I'm going to go explore LA. I'm going to go explore New York, wherever. Right. Yeah. For me, because it had been, you know, a lot of my childhood, I was really like ready for whichever way it was going to go. And I was going to accept it accordingly. But I was excited, you know, I think about it now and I'm like, that's pretty dope that I had plans, that I had like this other thing to go to. Yeah. And then I got to go to it. So all we got was a letter, by the way. We didn't get all, and I still have the letter. And it's just a very brief, formal, you know, respectful letter that we're not continuing.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, if that had happened any other year, I think I would have been extremely disappointed. And my mother had told me that every year it would wrap, I would go through about a 2-week mourning phase. And then I'd be up and done, because remember, my family moved to Orlando. So I didn't have to pack up everything and like reinsert myself into the life that we had built. I was, you know, a few miles away from my friends. I went to the same church every week. You know, it was way less of a attachment and detachment for me, but it's like part of my family went back away, right? Like they would just go, so I missed them, you know.
You spend so much time with them on set.
Yes. Yeah. And we were trained, you know, I've been watching some home videos recently, and I can tell you kind of gather through the context clues in the very, very beginning. Even when we were sort of hashing out the pilot, all of us were thrown together. Our parents, our siblings. My mother was in the school trailer helping teach everybody because she was a school teacher. She was mostly English, but she was in there teaching Mouseketeers. She was helping out, you know, pretty sure she didn't get for that. And it was just chaos. Like we were all talking over each other and exploring this whole newfangled instrument called a camcorder, right? And that's why, because they just pass it to different kids, you know. We'll go ask questions. And so, but like we were trained to look at each other and regard this situation as a big family. And I get it now that I never really let that go. As older Mouseketeers and then the younger ones came in, I don't know if that was how they were introduced. I don't know if that was the perspective through which they were asked to look at the rest of us. But I never let that go. And I didn't realize that, really. I mean, I always just thought, well, I mean, I consider everyone my brothers and sisters. I still believe that. But I didn't realize how that really was how we were put together, tables that we were brought into together. And I really think that's beautiful. But I think that's why everyone has different levels of connection with the show, because they were brought in at different times. They, lived in different places. Some of them were separated from a portion of their family, and it was different for everyone, and arguably harder for most of them to go back and forth, but I loved it.
Awesome. I remember reading this, and this is like years ago, when Brian McKnight was on the show.
Yeah.
And he said that he walked into, like, he was like in the hallway and he heard JC and Justin singing Take Six. I said this in the other interview too, like even the theme song had a gospel cadence to it, at certain points of the song. So I have two questions for you. One is, how much of an influence did gospel music have on the show, right? And then the second question was, who was actually singing, which round of Mouseketeers was actually singing that theme song, the first 2 seasons of it anyway?
The first seasons, I believe we crafted in the recording studio the rap or the whole like intro and outro vocals. I think they were captured while we were doing the pilot. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that was one of the first things we recorded.
Okay.
All of us, like gang vocals, and then it's possible that they went back in and had like Chase, Damon, Albert, and Fred do their solo moments without all of us in there. But I have footage of all of us yelling like together in the recording studio and going over the songs. So I remember about that show as far as R&B influence, gospel influence was everybody had the Brian McKnight album, like the big I Can't Go For That, or whatever that was called.
Back at One?
No, it was before that.
Back at One.
I Can't Go For That with was One Last Cry on that album?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I mean, literally play that. You could play that CD right now from start to finish. And I know every note. I will sing every note back to you. And then the other thing that I remember Tony Luca would say all the time, Shad day, all day, every day. Like that was the other thing you hear all the time. But like I was heavily influenced during that show. Mariah Carey came on the scene. TLC was on our show. CeCe Peniston was on, like you name it. Like Boyz II Men. We encountered Boyz II Men. Like we'd walk around a corner in the Walmart and like Boyz II Men. They were everywhere, right? Like we were always around Boyz II Men. And it was just so exciting for me, because I didn't know I would be such a sponge for it, you can tell how excited I am about it. It was a changer for me. So yeah, I totally geeked out about Brian McKnight. I'm sad that he doesn't feel the same way about my vocals, but I didn't have all that back then, right? I was still a work in progress. I was the Petri dish version of a R&B gospel pop singer, right? I was still imitating and figuring it out. In 8th grade, they asked me at school to sing Someday, and I had the whistle tone, but some of the high belt stuff I was still working on, like you can, when I sing I actually sang Someday on the new Mickey Mouse Club. I sang the other one too, the Make It Happen. I sang that one.
Make It Happen, yeah.
And I was so jealous. Exactly. But you can kind of tell, like, if you know those original songs very well, you can tell where I was having to finagle to do enough, because I knew all of those songs inside and out, but I was not capable yet of doing everything that they originally did. Back then, the art was to imitate. So I was all out trying to get it exactly the way they did it. And so, that was a big challenge for me. But I mean, 8th grade, Mariah Carey was my homework. Every day I would go home and try to do everything that she did on that album. And imitating all of these icons really gave me the tools that I still use today just in my own version of how I sing now. I mean, I just geek out at all that stuff. Pop R&B is just it for me.
So what was the age where you were like, okay, because like you said, the name of the game then was to imitate. You learn by imitating. But what was the age where you were like, okay, I got this, you know, and you branched out to do your own, put your own vocal or chord progressions and things together. What was that age?
Well, honestly, I was a late bloomer in that department. I'm a horrible template. Don't do it because, I just had so many detours. I don't believe I came into my own sound until I was in my 30s, but it's because I worked on other things much longer that did not have to do with creating my own sound. When I went to NYU, it was for musical theater. And so everything, as you know, there was not a lot of pop. There wasn't pop musical theater back then. Rent was just being born when I was in college. So that was maybe the first big pivot, that Broadway was experiencing in the pop realm. So I was, being classically trained. I really wanted to fill in all the gaps of, training. I wanted to really hone my craft in a more classical foundational way, because I'd really learned how to, do comedic timing and how to fake it till you make it and how to imitate. But, telling stories in a musical theater setting is a whole different animal. And so I spent 4 years doing that. And at the very tail end of my college career was when I was offered the opportunity to work with Capitol Records on a demo deal. And I struggled finding my own sound because I had never had time or the freedom to figure that out. And I believe I didn't find it during that demo deal.
Right.
And by the time we had finished exploring that, it was 90s bubblegum pop. Mm-hmm. And that was a whole other flavor that didn't work for me. I was more Alanis Morissette. I was like post Alanis Morissette and pre Adele, and I was in the wrong era. I was just in the wrong era. I was a little older than, of course, the celebrities that half of them were on the Mickey Mouse Club that popped out, into fame during that time. It didn't gel. I wasn't of that mold. And so, I kind of lost my identity for a while. So I had to rebuild and really walk away from the spotlight on that scale, that quest for fame that I thought I needed to achieve. And it turns out, I don't think that I was destined to have that kind of career. I honestly think it could have killed me. I think that I was too much a people pleaser. And I had been following directions in the business my whole life. I hadn't been a trailblazer. I'd been an imitator. Right. So I just wasn't ready. I needed to be in the oven longer. I just took so many detours that I wasn't ready. And then when I finally was, which honestly linked back up to when I was the strongest in my faith, then I was like, here I am, and everything in place with my voice. And then I sang all the notes for a long time, and it was really fun. And I have a 2017 album that I believe I finished in my 30s as far as my vocals. That album is the closest to, I think, the display of the culmination of all my sound and all of my view and all of my biggest desires in an album. I don't think I'll ever do anything as complex as that presentation, that collection.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask about where we were talking about faith, right?
Yes.
And Juan had a fantastic question for you.
How much your faith played into you? Because I asked about after MMC was done, but how much your faith was in place during MMC, and is that the thing that kind of helped you to? Because you were saying NYU was there. Was that another part of what helped you to just be? Because you were like, whatever it is, it'll be what it is. Is that one of the things that helped you to do that? And if not at that time, when did your faith get the strongest? You said it was more so in your 30s, right?
Yeah.
And when it got the strongest. So how has that helped you? How has it helped you over the course of your life? I guess is what I mean to ask.
I am of a well-educated Christian childhood But I'm a church girl who had slipped through the cracks emotionally. I didn't know how to connect to God emotionally. And so full transparency, because I feel like my journey hopefully will help other parents, or I'm not a parent, but hopefully will help parents and young people understand that the journey is the journey and we're all human. And I think it's important to search and make sure for yourself what you truly believe. But I also know that my roots contributed heavily to me strengthening my faith over time. And I remember being plagued with ritual and guilt. I don't even think anybody enforced that on me. I don't think my church was a guilt-driven church. I am just wired as a people pleaser to feel bad about disappointing someone. And when you put this father figure, all seeing, all knowing, kind of at top of your visual as a young girl who's afraid of disappointing someone, I was very uncomfortable in half of my life, or more than half my life. I was so worried and feeling guilty and always feeling like I wasn't measuring up, and it would cloud God's joy. So I didn't realize it at the time, but I had this very sad river that runs through me. There's this weird river of sadness, spiritual sadness, that I felt like I wasn't living up to something, or I wasn't doing stuff enough. I wasn't doing things right enough. I was always worried and anxious about it, just troubled privately. And I know now that there was this seed that just no one knew to rip it out of me. No one knew, especially me, that just because something is sort of deposited within you, that doesn't mean it gets to stay.
Right.
And I was my own worst bully, right? Like I was my own worst critic. And over time, I developed a very big identity crisis and a big fear of failure and a big self-labeled failure, because when I was making fame and fortune the goal, what I had, and these other Mouseketeer brothers and sisters achieve in different levels, I felt less than. And it has nothing to do with them, because all the while I celebrated everybody's achievements, but I felt like I was not measuring up. And I got very angry and very bitter and really self-destructive for a long time. Another one of my detours. And so I'm here to say that just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you don't need to do a lot of maintenance and make sure surrounding yourself with people who remind you of the joy and of the sacrifice of Jesus, and about what that means for you. What is how does God see me? And I just could not connect to that parent God like that, the father. I could not connect to a guy God, not judging me, and when I reached rock bottom, around 30, I felt like, gosh, I guess I'm all used up. I guess there's no real need, for me to go on. And, I wasn't suicidal, but it was sort of the flip side of that, where you just don't care. You don't think
you don't feel at all.
You're just blank. You're just empty. And so the moment that I recognized the worst of that, I got down on my knees and I reconnected, I rededicated my life to God, and I asked Jesus, just in case, to come back in, and I did a big confession, and I said, I've been pushing for stuff that maybe was not your goals for me. And I've been pushing for things and ignoring maybe what you were telling me about all of that. And it's left me in this very isolated place of failure. So from that moment on, even though, of course, you're always living and learning, I believe that I allowed God to take my life back over, and God has been equipping me with the people and the teams and the environments and the Holy Spirit. Like I see stuff now, you know, I hear, not hear words, I know, you know, I know stuff, or I hear
right, right.
Sounds
There's
all,
discernment.
you know, right. I have a lot more of this sort of open phone line to my maker. And it was a long process, but at the end of my 30s, like I found my sound in the middle of all of that. And, you know, I made that album, and I guess it's just been, I've been sharpened ever since. I'm just constantly being sharpened, and I get wiser with every year, and I never stop learning, and I never stop being transparent like this, because this is not just something that happened to me. This happens to pretty much a lot of people. And I think we're afraid to say that we're not all, again, not all done in the oven, right? Like that we're still searching for how to fully 360 connect to God, and like, what does God look like, or what is God to me? And what happened, one of the last things, sorry, this is forever, but like one of the last, I'll say, the big pivot for me, the pivot, like the beginning of the meltdown was when my mother passed away, when it was almost 20 years ago now. And
my condolences.
Thank you. She was fantastic, and her name was Joy. And so when I lost Joy, I really did lose joy. And what I realized, even though I would never go back and say, well, you know, I really did give it to God at that point. I said, you know, Lord, you're in control of this, but I would always choose to have her back. But I will say that in her absence, I realized she had been my Jesus. I had put her on a pedestal.
Wow.
And that's so hard to swallow, especially for those of us who still, you know, you have your mothers or you have your fathers and you're so close with them. And it's just a very interesting gift, if I can call it that, because it's from God. And so I do call it that. But God allowed that tragedy to open up a new way that I was able to connect directly with God, with Jesus, with the Holy Spirit, because I wasn't going to her and asking the question, right. Or, you know, I was able to go directly to the source, and I knew she was there anyway. Right. Mm-hmm. So once I pivoted back to God and I embraced all of that fully, I believe became the ultimate of my mother's daughter. And I was able to embody everything that she would have stood so firmly for. And I think she's incredibly proud, however that translates up in heaven. Mm-hmm. But I fought really hard for it. And I fell really hard before before I got back up, I fell really hard. And people have to be okay with being patient with all of us as we search and figure that out. Because if you don't believe what you believe because you believe it, is it really your truth? And I know that I know that I know what I believe now, because I had to get back up and choose it. That's the long of it. That is the long of it. There is no short of it. That's the short of it, I guess. But the long of it, the long of it is that it took me 20 years, you could say, to be who I am today. Because even last year I was working on some tragedy and recovering from things, and it's constant. But now, like, I just feel like it's, I guess, like, because I'm still here, mm-hmm. It's because I can encourage more people to be truthful about how they connect to God and see God as the mother father, right? When I think of God, the way I think of my mother and how unconditionally she loved me, and how I could have brought anything to her and she would have loved me through it, and she would have been supportive and found a teaching moment and a silver lining. When I think about how my mother treated me here on earth, and I imagine that God, is infinitely larger in a respect than what my mother could have mustered up, that really changed me and how I feel about.
I think, and hearing it sounds like, there was a deeper level of trust that came with even losing mom. And, like you said, you always had her there to ask. And I know that one day that's going to happen to me. I haven't experienced that. I've had friends to go through that. But hearing you talk about it, it seemed like there was a deeper level of trust that came in him, and that opened the door for that connection that you felt like you didn't have before.
Yeah. And I didn't know what I was missing, you know, you don't know. And that's why I encourage people to really take a step back and kind of look at your faith in as many angles as you can, and always focus on what Jesus did and the joy that the Lord, you know, shows, or how he celebrates us, and, you know, why all of this had to happen at all was because of how much we're loved. And to me, if that's the core, all the other details can, you know, flow through, and everyone can work that out with, you know, their own personal relationship with God, because every relationship with God is personal, very, very tailored, very, very, you know, personal relationship, just like all our human relationships are a little different from each other. And I can't express how scary the process is, but how sure I am on the other side of how hard, but it's worth it.
Right. If I could ask one question, because you said something that really struck me. You said talk about being patient. I said it this way: if we as fans and stuff could be a little bit more patient, if the media could be a little bit more patient, the things that we see that some of the child stars, because it's not just Disney stars, child stars altogether, go through, then, you know, because I look at it like this: there are things that you sacrifice a lot as a kid star. Would you agree that if we had more patience with people, that some of the things that the stars are going through, child stars are going through, that it would change them, or could help them a little bit more? Because I think that the media spins things in a way that hurts them more, you know, and then people have the wrong perception of them and all these kinds of things.
Yeah, you know, I think that just like those talent shows that can exploit you know, less than polished singers, I think that the media has a very similar outlet. You know, I think that it feeds off of exploiting tragedy. And it's not just, you know, child stars, but if you look at the average, most child stars have issues. And I'm not an exception. I mean, I just talked about a lot of what you know, I struggled with. And you're absolutely right. Even before, you know, when you were starting your question, the words that formed in my mind, you said it, it's sacrifice. We've paid a very high price for what we loved and wanted to do as children. We didn't get, I mean, people say, wow, but you were on the show and you were a Mouseketeer and you lived a dream. And you're right. I would never trade it. I would never trade it. If I could look like a supermodel, I would still not trade that for my voice. I really love myself in a deeper degree than I ever did before. Okay. Yeah. So I believe an exception. I think that, and I still have that river of sadness, right? It's just that it doesn't win, right? It doesn't win. Right. I accept it for what it is, and I understand the message, but I don't float in that river. Right. And there is a mourning of simpler days. And there is, like, I'm actually in the middle of writing a blog. And I think right now it starts out as saying, do you remember a time before pressure? And when I think about kid pressures, which are, you know, very great, there's things like spelling bees and bullies and sports and mathletes, you know, there's a lot. Like, I remember I stressed out in 5th grade about learning the Gettysburg Address, right? And that stuff's really hard. And if that's all you know, that's really hard. And everybody goes through something. But it didn't just stop there for me, you know? Everybody watched me grow up on television. And if I thought I was fat, everybody saw what I looked like. There was a way different feeling of my moments not being my own. Every time I sang a note, there was a glass window where people could walk by and take flash photography and wave at me, right? Like I was in a fishbowl, and I can speak generally now based on that when you are a child star, you are developing as being more on all the time. Gotcha. You are ready and on all the time. And some people rebel against it at some point, and some people can't let go of it. And either way, it can be torturous. Either way, it can be really stunting, because we're asked to be adults, yet still be children.
Yes, right.
And what is that? How do you explain to a 12-year-old, don't gain any more weight? How do you explain that you need to show up on time and be a professional, and you're 12, 13, 14, right. Now go throw a pie in someone's face, and then back to one, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Suck it up and let's go back to one. It can be confusing. Now, yeah. I was better wired to do that, but then, like I said, then there came a time where I had been instructed for so long, I didn't quite know what my version of art was. It took me so much longer to find who I was. Imagine if I had been some pop star. I would have taken any pill. I would have done any surgery. I would have dated anyone they wanted me to, taken whatever picture they wanted me to, if it made me famous. That is dangerous.
Yes.
So when you look at, now going back to your patients, we are in a time where we are being more educated on what mental wellness looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine choosing impatience with anybody who is struggling with that. I understand that, there are different versions of wellness or unwellness, and that the results, we've seen it in the news, more tragedy that's been, expanded, for the media purposes. And I believe that the only choice that's going to make a good difference is to have compassion.
Right.
And sure. we can't choose for those people how they progress and how they either go back or go forth. We can't choose their choices. We can't hold our breath. It's possible we can't pray something away. I'm not a believer of, I believe in the power of prayer, but I also don't know if it's each of our responsibilities to change somebody. I think that that's a God thing.
Right.
I think it's our responsibility to love people. And so I will always choose love and compassion and patience to the best of my human ability, because what other better decision can there be when I think of what Jesus would do, which is not a cliche to me. That's exactly what I ask myself all the time. How would Jesus handle this?
Right.
He would envelop someone in a hug. He would see them for who they truly are, and they'd see them for what the world has done to them.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. This has gotten deep today. I love it.
So deep. Let's talk about my stickers. I'm just kidding.
Yes. I was going to ask you about those stickers. Can you show them?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm so excited. So I've been attending a few conferences in the last few months, and I was inspired to develop something that is inspired, from my childhood. And I already have a t-shirt that commemorates Hanging On for Dear Life, but the second most favorite song is Jennifer Sings the Blues. I think it's from the 30s, and I was 13 when I filmed it. And it is an original song written by the writers of the show and sung live to tape by me with my live musical director playing the piano there. And the song goes through, it lists all the costumes that I had worn for, let's say, that at least that season, if not the last 2 seasons or so. Even the first season, I think I was a turtle with Damon in Turtle Diner. So these are the artist rendering of commemorating each of those costumes.
Wow.
And I added in the design, these were designed by Anthony Donovan, a big family member. And each of these have like wording. So this is outfit of the day, the hashtag OOTD. And this is a piece of bread. I was a piece of bread. This is the harp, and it says sang. They literally spray painted me gold and tied me to a harp. Literally, they put plastic spoons over my eyes and spray painted me gold.
Wow.
And I wore a pyramid. I think we had a pyramid party for a Thursday, right? Party day. And then we had a block party. And so I was a block. And then a fan favorite is the Tooth Fairy, because it was a 3-part little series. And this says bite me, which is so funny. That's the sassiest I get with these. And then I was the gorilla. I was Lieutenant Wolf in Mousetrap. And I wore a green face mask for some sort of spa thing. I was a cookie. So this is the gingerbread man. And I took a bite out of his head. And there's me with turtle aerobics saying, "You got this." And last but not least, I was an ant. And then I was a puppy in a puppy store. And the lyric says, and what next? A Wookiee? So Anthony designed me as a Wookiee with my side ponytail and my jacket on. Okay. And then later at the end of the song, we say, Fred says, "Time for Skunk Diner, Jennifer." And I say, "Give it to Brandy." But then later I did become a skunk waitress in Skunk Diner. So
nice.
And then the last sticker is blank so that I hand number each of them, because it's a limited collection. I won't be printing this exact collection again in this way. And so they're gone from the store, they're gone. So I number each of them and autograph them before I send them out.
Wow.
Sweet. Where can you get them at? It's on your website, right?
On my website, jennifermcgill.com. You just go to my store, and I think they're like the second thing, but you see my logo, and it says stickers, right? And like I hand number and autograph each one of them, of course, and I send them out. So I've been dreaming of this all year. They were dreamed up around March. And then in September they arrived, or I guess they were shipped, or they were finished. And I did a concert earlier this month announcing the stickers that it was time for pre-sale. And it was a really cool movement that everyone got online and started buying them. So the goal is, once they're gone, they're gone. And I'm sure like there are opportunities to make like Christmas ornaments and folders and like, jackets and all sorts of fun things. But this is the first, and it will be the only first. So it's a very special collector's set.
Cool. Cool. I have to ask you about when you were just talking about Fred and Moeva were the two original hosts. And yes. I know Fred went on to do like the voice of Skeeter from Doug, and he's done so many other things. What was it like working with them? And like, I remember also Moeva like suddenly left like by the second season. So do you keep in contact with them? And why did she leave?
I don't know why she left. And at that point, because people didn't have cell phones or social media, it was just those kind of slipping through the cracks, dropping off the face of the earth kind of moment. I mean, wow. I was still a young teenager. Like I had no one offered to connect us. And I was just a young kid living my life. So I kind of just kept on keeping on, and no one told me why. That just wasn't anything I was aware of. That's true with a lot of the stuff on the show. Like there's a lot of things that probably went down that I'm just not aware of, because I really wasn't in the middle of a lot of stuff. Being one of the younger ones for so long, it in a way kind of kept me out of a lot of stuff. Yes. Right. For better or for worse, I'm kind of blissfully ignorant about many things. And I don't know if there was any issue. I mean, remember, it was a job. When you think about it, it was a gig. And, for the adults, it especially was a gig. Fred was in the middle of his career. And, I'm sure Moeva went on and did other things, but I'm just not aware. I think I saw her on like one commercial years later. And I was like, oh, look. Same thing with Terry, actually. Terry came on to replace Moeva, and she was her own brand of like super like elastic comedic face, like really did a great job. And then what was crazy was, I think for the last season we had like random adult actors come in to play all of those roles, and that to me felt invasive. I was like, who are these people, right? Like,
Wow.
you're not the mom. I don't understand.
Why are you here?
Hi. Welcome to the set today. Like, it was so strange, but they were really trying to change stuff up in the last season. But really the payoff was we got to be with Chase and Tiffany. They got to come back and be our hosts for that year. That was
right.
Really, it was fun to see back in there again. That was really cool.
I want to ask real quick, if they were to revamp the MMC, would you consider being a host or an advisor?
In a heartbeat. Like, I probably shouldn't confess this, but give me a horrible contract, I'm in. Like, I will do it, right? I have dreams about returning to the show. I don't think that you would find a 90s Mouseketeer who loves the show more, but also who is such a big supporter of artists, to the point, like I said, I'm a president of an artist development firm. It's the only preparatory company out there that does what we do. And I am 110% behind the support and nurturing of artists. And so to be around incredible kids again and supporting and being a part of what they're doing, I've always loved production since I was on the show. I absorbed so much of so many different elements of what, production looks like. Not only, you're thinking television. So we had just all of the aspects of a television production, but then looking at the graphic design and then what it takes to put a song on its feet with dance moves, with costuming and hair and makeup and everything that goes into that, also overdubbing and, lip syncing to things, and then bringing a tour to life, and then doing all the interviews and all the media that comes with that, including the US tour, right? But on top of all of that, it was inserted inside of a theme park. So then you're inserted inside of a whole other level of excellent production going on 24/7 around you. So no wonder I never wanted to leave the business. I love the idea of what it takes to make something that fantastic. And I also understand that it's not like always a well-oiled machine, especially when you have that many preteens and teens running around like crazy, trying to figure out what a professional child looks like, right? And so, yeah, I would go back in a heartbeat. I have dreams about returning to the set. And I suppose if I had any more career bucket list items left, that would be one of them.
Like I was telling you in a previous interview, like I love the MMC album. And it's so funny because like I loved most of the songs in that album. Your song has a different meaning for me now as an adult versus back then, where I would listen to it. I'm like, oh, that's really nice. But now it just has a totally different meaning. So when you sing it now as an adult, do you feel like does it hold a different meaning for you? Do you feel nostalgia? Yes.
Yeah, I definitely feel nostalgia. I've recorded 2 other versions of the song throughout my adult life. And the last one was produced, I co-produced it with Jeff Bohannon. And that one to me brings the inside of how I feel about the song to the outside. When I look back on the original, I will always give it respect because it was the original that so many kids fell in love with and that helped them through really hard times. Because the reason why it's the #1 song from those who really loved my work on the show is because it helped them get through their grandmother's passing, or it helped them feel less alone getting bullied in school. And it kind of told them, you're not alone. You keep fighting, you keep hanging in, keep hanging on. And, it's interesting, or maybe not, maybe this is like, well, of course, this is what's happened. I feel like that has been, that I still continue to make those messages my mantras. I still talk about how you're not alone, keep fighting, keep getting up, like there's strength in the fight, and there's strength in fighting for that joy and that peace that passes understanding and all of that. I feel like I'm just a constant pep talker, right? Even to myself. My mother was the same way. So again, I rejoice in how alike I feel like we were. But the Unbreakable album version is how I feel now. Like that's the adult full feelings, all the feels in the production, in the percussion, in the keys, in the background vocals. It is slick. Like, it is a good track. I love that track. So if you haven't heard it, that is the adult version of that song. And so I always will love the kid version of that song, but I'm in love with where it's come at this point. How I've retold that message. Now we're all grown up and have children that need to hear that as well. So yeah, my mother loved that song. She always wanted it to be on an album, another album. But yeah, that song found its roots in hurting tweens and teens of the time. And I have found my purpose in helping support, teens and tweens, struggling, and the challenges that we have in this business, as well as, supporting all my fellow artists and entertainers, like unconditional love and joy and support. Like we were talking earlier about having compassion, being patient, understanding the process of healing, and how a lot of times you have to let the toxins come out first before things will heal back. And I believe that a song like that is timeless, because there is never a moment where anyone's going to say, yeah, you should let go and let yourself fall to your death. That's never what we'll tell someone. Just like the kitty cat hanging onto the branch,
hang on in there.
It's a song that never, the message never gets old. It's always important to somebody.
Right. Real quick, I just had like 5 90s trivia questions for you, if you're down. Okay.
Sure. I'm horrible.
All right, here we go. All right. So, in the NSYNC song "Drive Myself Crazy," the video "Drive Myself Crazy," there was an MMC member that made a small cameo appearance in that video. I'm gonna give you multiple choice, okay?
Oh, good.
All right. So, was it Dale? Was it Tony? Or was it Dee Dee?
Oh my God! I'm gonna say it was either Dale or Dee Dee. I bet you it was like a medical professional, so it was either a nurse or like Dale in a like a nurse's outfit, like wheelchairing someone. I bet you that would be it, but I don't know.
It was Dale. Dale, he was one of the psych patients.
Oh, he was a patient. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I to this day, like now I'm gonna have to text him and be like, dude, I didn't know. I got so excited when I saw Dale in a Thor movie, and now he was in like the insane.
Wait, he was in Thor?
Yes, he was. Do you remember the one? It was the first Thor movie where he like eats Natalie Portman. He comes down in the desert, and they have that little desert village fight.
Yeah.
There's like SWAT team guys on a roof with coffee, like trying to figure out what's going on. Dale's one of those guys.
Oh wow. I saw him in the episode of Good Luck Charlie. He played a neighbor. It was like the Halloween episode.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. I love seeing people pop up on stuff like that. Tony was in a Levi's commercial, and it was like the coolest Levi's commercial ever. And I don't even think you saw his face. It's so good.
Nice. Okay, so complete the lyrics, okay? Maybe the world is blind or just a little unkind. It's from a TV show.
I don't know.
Juan, kick it.
What is
the world is blind or just a little unkind. Don't know. Since you can't be sure. It was Punky Brewster. My voice.
Oh, Punky Brewster.
We had a football game that night. My voice is gone.
I'm sorry to ask that. You forgot about the football game.
I love you. That was technically from the 80s, by the way.
Oh, true. I thought I said 80s and 90s. My bad.
Qualification.
Yeah. She's got a point.
Mulligan. I was just a child.
All right. So in Bobby Brown's hit song "On Our Own," what movie soundtrack was that on?
I don't know. Ask me about Ghostbusters. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Ghostbusters.
That's it.
What?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, never mind. I don't know the title. There you go. Well, there you go. You got. We actually did that show on the song. Oh, let me rephrase. We actually did that song on the show.
Nice.
Rephrase. Finn.
Nice.
He did, who was that? I actually think it was, this was way back. This might have been the first season. And I think it was, they were all Ghostbusters. I think it was Chase. And then Albert probably did the Too Hard to Handle, Too Cold to Hold.
Yeah.
No,
Nice.
well, maybe both of them. But I think Albert, Chase, and Damon, it was their song. And I think they found like a little Slimer puppet. And like, it was huge special effects back then. Like you kind of did like with the puppet and they like superimposed it like over. Yeah. Oh man, they worked real hard for those effects back in the day. Those are my favorite kind though. It's my favorite kind where you're like, oh, it was a hand puppet, you know. But yeah, we did that on the show.
I always thought like when Albert and Chase and Damon were on the show, they had so much energy.
Yeah.
And so
they were like 3 peas in a pod, you know. They were super good friends. You know, you kind of had, you know, for better or for worse, you had little cliques, like little gravitational pulls between, you know, certain guys and certain girls, you know. And yeah, Chase and Damon and Albert, not only did they just click, but they were also like learning together. They learned dances together, and they Albert was, you know, a professional ballet dancer. Like he was he had so much work already before the Mickey Mouse Club. And then Damon had this natural charisma and like loved everything Michael Jackson movements, like all of them. And Chase was a super accomplished singer dancer, specialized in clogging, but he was an incredible dancer, but he was learning from the other guys. You know, I've seen that in some of our rehearsal footage as well. He was learning some of these more like hip hop moves. And so they really felt other, and it was cool to see how in a way they sharpened each other. They'd play off each other, and they really enjoyed being around each other. You know, and everyone had, you know, those types of connections, but theirs I would say was the most powerful, you know, and it showed on the show for sure.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because like when they went on to do the party, it was still energetic, but it was like not as energetic, you know.
They were probably tired.
Yeah.
They had a lot going on. They're tired. That's why.
Yeah. So you said that did you had another announcement to make, or was it the stickers?
It's a soft announcement, right? So
okay.
I have put together almost all the social media for a new show that I'm going to be debuting with my best friend who to visit me. Like we grew up together in Texas, and then she used to visit me when school was out every summer. And a lot of the original Mouseketeers recognize her face today. Like when she would accompany me on a conference, you know, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you know. So she has a very special perspective about being a fan of the show, as well as being my best friend and kind of living through it with me. And the show is called Club Rewind. And we are going to watch episodes of the Mickey Mouse Club and talk, starting with season 1 and just working our way through. And
cool.
Eventually, I will be inviting fellow Mouseketeers on for, you know, special guests so that we can discuss everything together. And I will also be entertaining, like inviting certain fans on to share their perspective. And like we're just gonna be talking about everything. So we're kind of in it for the long haul. This is something that, because there's 7 seasons, it's it could last over 7 years, right? Just talking about the show. But it's Club Rewind because, you know, we love that era so much that we want to leave it open for, you know, all sorts of discussions in the future. But I felt it was really important to have this platform, you know, just something really fun that me and my best friend really love, and that we can kind of be the hub to you know, continue those conversations and kind of do the remember that one time,
that's a great idea. Oh man, I can't wait.
So it's not necessarily, you know, something that we are, I don't know, fanning the flames of, but it's gonna happen, and we're expecting to debut it in January. Cool. And now I'm basic, like right now I have a DVD reader on my desk, and I am converting files into my Dropbox from all of these old DVDs that used to be VHS tapes.
Wow.
And going through all the seasons, and we're gonna be comparing notes and being like, okay, what do you have? All right, what do I have? And what do you have? And we're just going to try to go in order. And, right now, of course, I mean, there are, bootleg versions of pieces of the show, but our goal is to pool our own resources and really watch the episodes and then come together on the show and talk about it. We're going to open it up to fans, like requests, questions. There's not going to be an open chat line, but requests and questions, so that the fans are going to be a part of writing each of our show episodes, because obviously we want to talk about stuff that you want to hear.
Yeah.
So
I can't wait for that.
Yeah. You're going to find us on Facebook, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe and start asking your questions and getting requests in, because we're working on the show now.
Wow. Thank you so much for letting us know about that. That is great news. And thank you so much for your time. Yes. And how can people reach you?
The best two places are, you can go to my website where all of my social media lives. And I love Instagram, so you can always find me there. Feel free to follow me. I pretty much post everything from Instagram, and it floats into Facebook, etc. So Instagram, happy place. But my website has everything. So those are the two places.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. And Juan, are you still there?
I'm still here, man.
Okay. How can people reach you, Juan? You weren't expecting that, were you?
Nah, sure weren't. I don't know. I'm on Facebook. You can get to me on Facebook at I forgot what it is. Just look up Juan Dickerson on Facebook. It's JUANDICKERSON. You can look me up there, and I really don't have all that social media stuff, so that's pretty much it. Or you can do juan.dickerson@gmail.com.
Right on, brother. I want to thank you both for your time. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for being on the show for a second time. And really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I really enjoyed talking with you.
Me too. Memory lane, always travel.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
All right.
Good night, everybody.